Hello, in this Java video we are going to cover the for each loop. If you have not checked out the video on arrays in this series, I'll recommend going and checking that out because the for each loop is going to be using arrays and extending on what we already did in there. Okay, so we created an array in that video, doesn't matter what the data type is, and then we created this for loop like. So to be able to traverse the array and just get all the values, we simply printed them out. There's actually an easier way of doing this. So if I comment this out, and instead you can do for. In some languages it's called for each, like the actual loop is called for each, but in some languages the keyword is for each, but in Java it's just for. And instead of having three parts where you set up some sort of iterator or index value, you set up the condition, and then you set up the actual thing that happens at the end of each pass of the loop. So in this case you're just incrementing it by one. You simply do something like so. So you set int, like this int is a little different to why we use int here. So you use, actually let me demonstrate this further. So if I get rid of this and if I change this to a float, and if I change all these values to floats, should be fine even if I don't change them explicitly, but let me just make sure that I do. Okay, so if we were to run this now, so using the old loop, it still works. So what I wanted to say is this int right here is not sort of related to the data type of the array. It isn't. This is just an index, and the index of the array, so 0 through to whatever, however long this is, I think like what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So the last index actually is index 11, but the length is 12. The index is always an integer, so this is what this is referring to. But in the for each style of loop, you put the exact data type that your array is. So in this case it's float, and if I comment this out, you put float, and then in here you specify some sort of name for each element in the array. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to call it, I don't know, float e, and then you put colon, and then what you put is the name of the array. So ARR, you don't put any square brackets or anything like that, put curly braces, and that's it. So what this actually does, this is really cool. This is a shorthand version of doing this, and inside you can print it out to do whatever you want. So this says go through this array, and for every single element, so this is one, this is another element, this is another one, this is another one, this is another one, just go through every single one and call it e every single pass of the array. So you do system.out.println, and if we print out e, even though we're not specifying any sort of index, it still prints out all of the values. If I, let's say, change this to an 8, so you can see it's definitely working with this. If we scroll up, it prints out the correct array. So this is a nice shorthand version of this, and this is great if you're traversing array. If you're trying to do something else, then you'll probably want to fall back on the traditional for loop. Another thing to bear in mind, not all programming languages have a form of for each, so sometimes you have to do this method, but in Java, fortunately, we do. So that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I look forward to seeing you in the next part of this series.